let me know when you're ready, I guess.
Serge, did you need Robin Collins?
No, do you want to, are you on IRC?
I will be. I can tell him.
Okay, I guess we're good. Hopefully Daniel will show up eventually. So basically pasted the what we had in the blueprint.
Okay.
There, so we can maybe go through that, also see if we have anything else people would like for LXC for this cycle.
You want to go through it, or should I?
Mm-hmm.
You want to go through it, or should I?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so this being an LTS cycle, I really don't want to do too much to rock the boat. Some of the things that we do want to get done are, first off, when people first get started with LXC and create their first container, they tend to need to go to a blog site or a how-to or something to figure out how to set it up at first. There's not a lot to do, but you have to do it exactly right. And so we want to put some example code, and I think Stefan was talking about making it triggerable through etc default LXC, whether or not an LXC bridge gets started up, and have a sample configuration file you can use so that when you just install LXC, you don't have to do any more other than just say LXC create whatever and get started. Proper reboot support is Libert LXC right now doesn't support reboot and shutdown. The way LXC does it is by the monitor watching var run utemp, and it looks in there for entries saying I'm shutting down or I'm rebooting, and then it does the right thing within it or restarting the container. This has the biggest problem with that is that Ubuntu wants to mount a tempfs over var run, and so we're having to do hacks to work around that. And so we want to get a patch that's finally accepted into the kernel so that the container can send a signal to the LXC monitor saying what it's doing, whether it's shutting down or rebooting. And that's going to let us clean up several things. Containerized syslog I put up there, but I'm really not sure that that's going to happen this cycle still, because there's some issues around how to do that cleanly.
Serge, on the containerized syslog, does that include more than just the syslog? We're talking the kernel output, audit D?
It wouldn't be audit D. It would include anything that user space generated, and then anything that gets targeted to a namespace. Like we would have to do this on a case-by-case basis, but any place where we're doing a print K right now for something like a firewall,
right.
We'd have to make judgment calls for each one whether the container should get it or not. But if it gets it, we would do an NS print K and then target it at the network namespace.
Okay.
Wait, so which direction are you talking about there? You're talking about separating out. I mean, are syslog messages that go to the container, those already
No, they go
in the container? No,
they go to the host.
They go to the host.
Yeah.
Huh. Could our syslog help here? Some way of like filtering?
No, because it all just gets sent over dev k message to the kernel, and the kernel also
so
mentions
one kernel.
Yeah.
All namespace device.
Gotcha. Darn.
Yeah, and so it only bugs me whenever I want to use a container to try and reproduce a bug that involves looking at the log messages, but it gets kind of ugly that way. User namespaces with the VFS. I've got some vague hopes of this cycle getting something. At the LXC sprint, we had Eric got a proof of concept working where you could take the superblock of a device and tag it with a namespace so that you could have a loopback file system, say this belongs to that container, and then the container could use that file system and be in a private user namespace, so we could get all the security inherent with that. It would be great if we could get that in this cycle. But that, of course, depends on upstream kernel politics and such, so there's no prediction.
The container could use what? What would you then give access to the container to?
The loopback file system representing...
And why aren't you able to do that now?
You're not able to do that now because every check for file access and for privilege with that is going to be targeted at the initial namespace. And because the owner of any file is always now the initial namespace.
Okay.
And so if you start a child user namespace, you will get the world access rights to any file, and you can't create any file. And so that's why we're not using user namespaces in containers right now, because it makes for a useless container.
Okay.
Mostly secure, but useless.
There's, in libvirt LXC, there's stuff that basically you can pass it an image and it magically loops it and puts you in the container.
Yeah, doing that is fine. The work that's been done is to have it with user namespaces, so basically making that you're not technically root in the container.
Well, so
because currently you can allow block access to /dev/something to container. That will work fine. Or you can mount it on your host and then just give that.
That's how libvirt does it.
Right.
Right.
With the user namespace, it's actually kind of safe because the container itself can have access to the device.
Right. So right now, when you start a container, either with libvirt or with LXC, you're still in the initial user namespace, and so all of your capabilities, all your privileges, they're still just a set that if you can get access to a resource that you can get the privilege to, you'll have that privilege. With the user namespace, that resource will likely be owned by the initial user namespace, and you will not have any privilege to it. So that's why we want that.
Yeah.
I mean, things like proc sysrec trigger that you need a privilege to get to. Once you're in a container, you will not have that privilege because proc sysrec trigger will be owned by the initial user namespace, and you won't have the capsus reroute permission to that file, to that user namespace.
Sir, so what's the action item there?
The action item there is just to keep pushing on the patch set.
Keep pushing on the patch set that who wrote?
It's still, the stages it's going through is right now we're still trying to find little leaks in the user namespaces where if you're in a child user namespace, you get inordinate rights to the initial user namespace or to the parent user namespace. So I've got nine patches still that I'm trying to get pushed for that. Once those are in, then I can proceed to relaxing some things so that if you're in a child user namespace, you do get the privilege to your own user namespace.
Okay.
And I've got some of those written. There's going to be a lot of those to write.
Okay.
But the idea is that we get it first clamped down so that you're secure, and then we give you the permissions that you need just to the resources you own.
Okay.
And then there's a separate patch set from Eric on tagging a superblock, which is it's only a simple first step at getting file support, but hopefully it'll be enough to have containers. Okay. And the next step after that might never get done because it involves mapping of the user IDs using external attributes, and it's might never happen. So. Do you want to move AppArmor support to the end? Because we're going to have a long discussion on that.
Sure.
And ARM support too, because we need... Is someone from ARM here? Oh, yeah.
I'm actually just wondering what they need. It kind of works. It actually works very well.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Is that...
Who actually added that? Did you add it to the agenda, or did someone else?
Oh, maybe I did. I just don't remember it.
Okay.
Does anyone from ARM want to speak up on something they need from LXC that they don't have right now? Martin?
Only testing, making sure that everything works. When we get in there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I mean, we tend to run quite a few containers on ARM right now, between Chuck having OpenStack on Panda and we've...
Yeah, but I mean, there's also this was yesterday, we talked about the integration to various other deployments like on Orchestra and the rest of it, where it all has to come together. All the pieces have to be tested to make sure that the calls and calling in, calling out, libvirt, all work as expected against LXC. So these are more support, things that surround LXC and support it and make it not weird.
Yeah, so we can expect some bugs to be opened by those layers, but there's no action item for us on that other than watch for them.
I'm not walking in with anything at the moment.
Cool.
The only ARM kind of related action item I would probably take is to make sure we can build in a working LXC container for ARM or PowerPC or whatever on non-native architecture. So being able to do it on x86, which we are really close to being able to do.
And what do we need for that?
We basically just need, well, the current trick is starting upstart as x86 and then starting everything else as ARM because of ptrace. Ptrace not working, the QEMU ARM stayed like last time I tried, at least. So James should have libniH, which is our last library not being multi-hardware ported soonish. So I'm hoping to have a demo working by Friday.
Okay. Is there something?
So
is there an action to be written down for that? Or?
Yeah, because we need to change the templates to actually detect that, and if you create something that's PowerPC or ARM or whatever, to just like do the right thing and basically tell the bootstrap to go with the 2 steps the bootstrap.
So make the templates non-x86 architecture aware?
Right, yes.
Okay. Cool. Did you want to say something about tests and QA regression tests? You added that, right? You added that?
The
tests
no,
and QA regression tests?
No, I didn't. I don't know who did that, but I didn't.
Okay, so we'll move on to MKNode.
Right, okay. So one of the problems we currently have with LXC when you want to upgrade a container, you mostly see that with Lucid actually, is you create a new Lucid container, so the bootstrap is going to just use what's in the main main release bucket, not what's in updates. So once you start your container and you run the upgrades to actually get it up to date, it's going to try upgrade UDEV. And UDEV removes all its device nodes that are created in /lib for some reason and recreate them. And that fails because the container is not allowed to create most of them. A fix I've got for that is to simply add 2 lines in the default LXC configuration file for the Ubuntu templates that basically allows the container to create any device node but not access them at all. So that fixes UDEV. The interesting side effect of doing that is that then UDEV actually works as it does on the host. So if you plug a USB key, you're going to see the device node show up in /dev in the container. You won't be able to access it, it's going to show up. So I'm not sure if we have if that's going to cause any problem. It doesn't on the container I'm running currently, but it might for some things. So I think for precise we should do these changes pretty early on and see if we get bug reports basically.
Okay,
I don't know if someone has any opinion on that.
Can you block MKNode on a major minor basis, or can
yes,
yes, you can.
Yeah.
You can.
Yes. So if you actually know some devices that we want to really block, we can do that. Yes.
And you need to read write on that same granularity.
Yes.
That's awesome.
The problem's making them disappear, like actually preventing them from ever showing up.
Right, and that's the device
Yeah.
namespaces,
So-
which...
Right. Yeah, that would be nice to have, but probably not in a few years, I guess.
Well, I'm assuming that we are going to be on kernel 3.2 for Precise Penguin.
That's what I keep hearing.
We're not really going to have a lot of, with LXC, we're not going to be able to get a lot of that device namespaces stuff in.
We're not...
we
no one's even-
don't even have a patch set.
Yeah, it's not even designed yet, so
So-
it's...
It's not going to be really possible. That's
Right.
the point.
So for now, I guess the idea is just to make sure that we can upgrade a container similarly to what you can do for a regular Ubuntu system. The thing is just to check that we won't break some stuff in user space because they see a device node, they try to access it, and they can't, even though they are root.
So is it, the only action there is just get that change into a template early on and watch for
do it and
breakage.
check. Yeah, I can do it in the next upload because I've got some other things to change anyway. So I'm fine with taking that action.
Can you
on
give
time
me a
as well.
blur for the action item? I didn't follow that last bit.
Allow MKNode in the default Ubuntu template. I guess would be
For
actually-
precise and
right for precise.
watch it break.
So I came across this recently. I think if you do a mount of a kernel dev tempfs inside a container, I think you get all the devices,
Probably yes.
and they're just accessible. They're the real devices. Is that right?
Well, you won't be
No,
able to read
they
and
won't be
write them.
accessible.
No, it's still
It'd still be blocked.
It will be blocked by the C group
Okay.
dev.
Because I most certainly had some issues when I did, like I was doing the OS, and inside it I was doing that, and I was getting bad things happening on my host.
I mean, as long as the device is created, and it doesn't matter if you use metnode or if they're automatically being created. If the node number, if the node if the ID is the same, it'll get blocked.
So yeah, ideally, I would like to just let anyone do any keynote they want in the container and build on it. If we see it's a problem, the fallback would be to actually audit exactly what device nodes your dev wants to create and allow only these. The problem is it's perfectly possible for another package to do the same thing, and we don't know about it, and it's going to break.
On the same idea, though, we currently have some pretty heavy issues around, the actions of mod probe. If you actually allow mod probe to run, if mod probe runs and it tries to load a module in the container, it does have system-wide effect.
That's actually a change I've got on my pending list of uploads that will drop capsys module by default in a template.
Which is a low-hanging fruit on the tree to fix, but inside of Precise, because this does break things all over the place.
Yes. What are we dropping by? What are the 3 ones we want to drop by default? There is capsys module, and the 2 others are for
CapMac admin, CapMac override.
Yes. So these 3 capabilities will be dropped by default in Precise. You can always turn them back on in the container configuration. So by default, you shouldn't be able to do anything with canon modules, which I think is a very good idea for container.
And you're going to do this for libvirt also?
libvirt may already do it, doesn't it?
I don't know, but but I don't like lots of improvements to the LXC thing that doesn't gain
No, if you're going to insist on
the
having that
actual
code base.
path that people use.
Yeah, I don't know if we should.
I'm definitely not going to do it myself.
Well, I don't mind doing it. I'm wondering how we can track that.
Yeah.
I mean, if we just for each thing that you do, if we need to have a bug open.
Yeah, I guess. Also, I'm not sure if we. In the case of libvirt, it should actually be an extension of the XML configuration file, so that it's also configurable.
I don't think that's just like device C group. You can't configure it through XML in libvirt.
Okay, fine.
So we're gonna have to just do it always or never.
Okay.
If you want, if you don't mind opening a bug for
Just
libvirts.
never.
What's that?
Just never.
Yeah, capsys module you never need in a container.
Actually, I'm using that.
Really?
Yes, because I've got a container for kernel development. I don't want to have kernel packages and stuff on my laptop, so I'm developing in a container and loading modules from there.
Okay, you just volunteered to fix that then.
But I'm perfectly fine just changing the configuration for that container when I actually need it.
CapMac star, if you want. And so that's actually, once we talk about App Armor, we'll figure out if we really want to drop CapMac admin or not, and CapMac override. So capsys module for now is all we really have to drop in the container, in libvirt.
I think we're already doing a pretty good job of protecting KMM and the rest of that, so it's just a question of continuing to, that's why I put up, continuing to improve security.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
And next one is the other issue that we have when we try to upgrade the container, which is if you try to upgrade Mantle, I think, it's trying to overwrite lib init fstab, which fails because it's a bind-mounted file from the host that we use to work around some other problem with Mantle. So I'm actually wondering, who's taking care of Mantle now? Is that? Is you? Yay! I wasn't sure if that was you or just a bit very hierarchical. So, do you remember exactly what we're actually doing with that?
I think all we want to do is we want to have mount all, detect if it's in a container through the environment variables that I can get from upstart, and then certain file system and libinit fstab. We just wanted to not try mounting. Yeah, I think that's all we need. And then basically, once we have that and the reboot, so we don't have to munge with /run at all, we can get rid of the LXC guest package. And then the same precise image that runs on hardware or on KVM will run in a container with no changes. So, what's that?
Is it preferable to have Mantle detect the environment running it, or to have LXC tell Mantle what to do in that environment? So that's my mind, kind of my option on the LXC start, change the behavior.
So you're asking whether we should just have mount all have a flag that gets set in the...
I'll just pose the question. I don't know enough about
the way we detect right now whether we're in a container or not is that upstart will have an environment variable sets that's either LXC equals or libvirt UUID equals something. And if that gets set, then it can pass a flag to mount all saying, I'm in a container, don't mount certain things. Would that be acceptable, you think?
We can combine both. We have the mount of the job in the container, just make that variable and pass the flag to mount or yeah, there's ways to go.
Cool.
Because I ideally would like to have that done within Mantle, so yeah, we can basically get rid of all the LXC specific upstart jobs that we have currently. So you can indeed take any existing Ubuntu system and just put it in a container started.
So I mean, the first step there, I think, would be to actually go through the list and libinit fs tab and figure out which ones are really bad. Because I just went through and commented out most of them. There's probably some that don't need to be.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine doing that and just checking with James on the actual fixes. Good. And yeah, then I guess we can probably make in the same action item to drop the exist. No, we can only drop our existing init upstart script when you also have the shutdown reboot bar.
Right.
Large, right.
Yeah, we need both of those.
Yes. Okay. So we really need
Well, and
to
really-
push that patch set.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is it actually? Is it listed somewhere? It's not on the list.
Is what listed? Pushing the reboot
Oh
patch
yes.
set?
Okay, second one. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Good. Okay.
So app armor?
Yes.
John, you want to come up?
So there's several items here. So there's within the container itself and outside the container. So we already have the concept of a profile namespace or a policy namespace. And this plays to the CapMac admin question. So when you are in a namespace, you only have the right to manage your own namespace and child namespaces. So you don't actually have to take away CapMac admin for AppArmor.
Cool.
Can you repeat that? Sorry. When you're inside a namespace, you
Right. So when namespaces are hierarchical,
Mhm.
and when you are in a namespace, CapMac admin gives you the right to administer your namespace and everything, all your children.
Okay.
You can't manage the one that's above you.
Okay.
So we don't have to worry about CapMac admin for that. What we do need is outside the namespace, so at the host level, we need some patching to properly handle the when the file system namespace separates, so it becomes disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need some interface patching to make it easier to create namespaces, so it's reasonable for LXC to create a namespace for a child if we're going to have a child namespace. And
the thing about detecting the namespaces and getting the file name right, do you have a plan for how to do that, or
I do.
are you just pivot approach? You're going to mark down the location, or what's the?
Yeah, when we pivot, we're going to be able to, or either on the pivot or the mount. I need to play with it, but we'll mark down the location essentially. And then when we resolve back to an unresolved route, we'll check a disconnected path. Then we can check to see, well, if we're in the namespace, it shouldn't be disconnected. So if we're currently mediating it at the child, if you're hitting the disconnected for that one, then that's a different disconnected. But
Right. So if you're in a child and you're checking against a profile in the child namespace, then you just put a slash in front of it. If it's in the parent namespace, then you prepend the path that got detached.
Well, actually, the
right?
child should actually resolve correctly. If it doesn't, that's a different issue. We'll separate those two out. But what I'm saying is, the disconnected, we can check. We can see depending on which namespace we're in.
Cool.
Which way to do it.
Okay. Cool. Because right now it doesn't get the slash in front of it, and so
Right.
it doesn't ever match up.
Right.
So.
And then so create the interface, proper interface for making it to get into these things, because it's kind of ugly right now. And then within the child,
there's really nothing to do within the child at this point. What we do need is, at some point, we need stacking. So that's one of the issues we have right now, is you'll either have system policy or child policy. So, and we have it on our roadmap to support stacking. I just don't know if we're going to get stacking of policies done for precise.
Okay. So what do we want to do about that for this cycle then? Do we want to do we want the container to be able to set its own policy, or do we want it to be constrained by a host policy, or do we want to make that an option at create time? Since we can't do both.
Right.
I think ideally...
Can I make a suggestion? I ran into this bug. I think I reported to you guys where my containers were being constrained by host policy, and that made absolutely no sense at all to me. And I'm trying to find a use case for that.
Yeah,
well see,
the thing is, I actually wrote an abnormal profile that we can run on the host to kind of secure the container.
right. So what you saw
so
was
we might want to have this one applied from the host, and then have abnormal profiles like for Apache or whatever in the container itself,
right.
and have both of them being applied at the same time.
right.
Because
What
we don't want the
constrained
container
you?
itself to restrict what it can do in proc, for example, because well, it's pointless.
Right. What constrained you was the Apache policy on the host, which that was wrong. With this policy, basically you'd be constrained by the container policy, but not by the host Apache policy. So you wouldn't be allowed to do things to the host from inside the container, but you'd be able to run Apache in your container.
So what would happen is we would create a child namespace. So when the child loads up policy, it's not going to try getting the host policy.
That's the other alternative.
It's not going to be enforced, or it's going to be enforced. So the interface we're going to have to go with, I think, for precise is you will use the stacking interface, but you have your choice of having your host in the unconfined state, or the child just won't apply its policy. So when stacking happens, it automatically just all works. So what will happen is when you call the stack call to set up your stack, your context, what I see for precise is if the host is unconfined and you set up the stack, then the child policy would get applied, because that's the trivial stack case,
right,
where we could do that. Where if the host has policy, you'll get the namespace, but your stack won't happen.
And then, but you'll get the host rules, or what?
Yeah, you would get the host rules.
Okay, good. Because I want to make sure that there's the option of the container has a policy just tightening down the container, and the container can't load its own profiles. Fine for now. That's just a bug, and that'll get resolved for
so we can load the profiles. It's just
they won't get
enforced. We can either make it so that it'll keep the child from loading the profiles if there's no stack there, or we can load the profiles and just not enforce them.
I wonder which is better.
And
I think I prefer the first option, but
Yeah, I think I would prefer the first as well.
Make it look like it's disabled.
Yes.
right.
And I mean, most of the scripts already deal with that just fine, so
Yeah.
that's good. Yes.
Okay, so there's no reason why it should be difficult to be able to say in the LXC per container config file, I want AppArmor
Right.
this way or that way?
There needs to be some work to be done to do that, but we'll get on that.
So yeah, I guess we need some work on your side to actually get that into AppArmor. We'll need some work upstream LXC to actually get what the right codes to this as well.
Well, we'll probably have to prototype in our package first and then pass it upstream.
Yeah, because we'll need to change the template. We need to change probably LXC in it.
Yes.
We should do that. But yeah, then we just forward the chain as usual.
Okay. Do you have any kind of timeline? Yes.
Yeah, I had a question on the host policy versus the container policy. John, when you were saying that with the stacking, you weren't saying if the host has any policy. You're saying if we try to confine the container with the thing that Stefan was doing, then we can't have policy inside the container. Is that correct?
So if you're trying to confine the monitor, the setting up and all the children for the container, then it's going to carry that policy down into the container as well.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean the host itself can't have policy.
Right. Now, in that situation, can the container have its own policy for specific binaries? When you install MySQL, you get...
If the host, the monitor, the container monitor, that's the parent of the container, is unconfined, the container itself could have its own policy. Until we get proper stacking, it's either or.
Okay, so if the container is confined, you don't get child
Right.
policy. Okay. Right.
It still raises, I think I'm just confused. I think you guys answered it, but the problem that I ran into specifically was that like /run removed, so my host was expecting Apache to write things in /var/run and it went in
Right.
/run.
So what you had going on was you had the host policy and the child container sharing, or the host and the child sharing the same policy.
Right.
And
that's just a bug. And
that's just, yeah.
And the way that's fixed is
properly setting up the...
actually having it
Yes.
branch off from its own policy, essentially, when you
Yes.
create a container.
Right, so what's happening with you is that this is the host Apache policy we're being applied here. That's not going to happen. We're going to have a separate policy for the container here. And then what he's saying is that we're going to have to choose on a per container basis whether this saying, for instance, the container cannot access Apache on the host anymore. Either this gets applied or the container can apply its own policies for Apache and such. But then this will have to apply. Your bug will be solved.
Okay, because that makes sense. Yeah.
Timeline. Is what do you already have in your mind what it's going to look like so that we can start prototyping in? I'm a little worried about how long it might take to get the LXC part of the code.
Right.
So
it's going to take me. Well, if I work on that part right away, I figure it'll take a couple of weeks to get that up, at least to the point where we can have it to the point where it may not be completely done, but be working.
We can
on
start
it.
interacting.
Right. And so what? 2-3 weeks, and then we can have something up from now.
Cool.
To start doing it on the LXC end. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
I guess once we've got like a canon somewhere in PPA that has something close to final API, we can start doing that.
Right. Yeah. The API is the easier part than the API is kind of already defined. It's actually implementing the underneath bits. The other part that we're not going to get this time is so right now we're doing all our logging through audit or audit. So that does go to the syslog, but you're not going to get namespace syslog out of that, right? And Ubuntu doesn't by default run audit D. So if audit D is running, all the audit stream is going to go to audit D instead in the host, which is a problem for child policy.
Are you gonna tag the messages with a prefix for the namespace?
We can tag them.
I mean, that solves that, right?
Does audit D handle that though? I mean, so what I'm saying is, if audit D is installed, then the kernel audit messages, instead of going through the syslog, they go down to the audit daemon instead.
Right, but I'm saying that audit D doesn't need to consciously handle it as long as all the messages for that are prefixed for the. I mean, the only thing that would be really bad is if you get messages for something that's in a container,
right,
and it looks like it's on the host, and now you're misinterpreting.
Right. Yeah. So we can prefix those. That's not a problem.
Yeah. Then I don't think that's bad. Then.
So just the prefixing's enough.
I think so. Okay. I mean, and for next thing, we might one day want to do something about that, but. Like you say, I don't know how many people are using Audit D in Ubuntu.
Yeah, well, it's not default. You have to manually install it. So.
Right.
So I have another question. It's actually very much related to what I asked And I may be being dense, and that's fine. Tell me. But, so, it's my understanding that the stuff that Fawn was working on was to try to fix the shortcomings of LXC currently in terms of making it root strong, right? You're filtering out certain dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
So, you filter that, but then practically speaking, you install MySQL or whatever, and you lose your policy there because of this, and that's a pretty heavy trade-off. I'm just trying to understand, I mean, that is what we're talking about, right? I mean, you make that choice.
Until next cycle or whenever we can get the stacking properly enforced, yes, that's going to...
I guess we have to to choose what the default will be. I would be tempted to have the default being that we enforce what we have on the host. And if someone actually wants to have a problem in the container, they're going to make the conscious choice of not.
Yeah. But your question worries me though, Jamie, because what he's doing, what we want to stop user space from accidentally doing something to harm the host. We're not at the point where we're trying to stop a malicious user yet. So I mean, we don't want Clint to run Apache and get the wrong policy applied, and he can't run Apache in a container. That's what we want to stop. We don't want upgrading a package to try and install a ARM module in your x86 host. So I mean, that's the kind of thing we want to stop right now. We're just not at the point yet where we can.
So this isn't really about isolation.
I mean, we're working up to it.
It's isolation from each other, but I mean, it's not about, confining and malicious.
With 1204, I do not want anyone thinking they can hand over a root shell to someone in a container.
Thank you.
So it's root mainly, though. It's not.
Also, because we actually noticed a few shortcomings of actually using that profile route, mostly because as it's path based, you can just mount proc somewhere else.
Which is one thing I want to ask.
Proc stuff.
Yes, that's another item that we probably should discuss for Apamo, being able to have something tied to the file system somehow.
It's not.
I mean, both proc and cgroup would come in that form.
Right.
Sys.
There's several.
Yeah,
you can
sys
do that
devices.
too. You can tie them to the simplest way is to set up a mount rule to say you can't mount them different places, and then you just you use your variable that you've defined to say where those can go.
But is that doable? That's not doable with current policy, or is it?
No, it will be for the next iteration.
Okay, and is how that's going to be done already clear? How users will use that, so we can start expressing the policy, or?
Yeah, that one's again a few weeks out for the permission rate.
Presumably not concurrent with the other.
2 minutes, guys.
We'll see.
Okay.
So I guess we should just
I think we'll get the other stuff. Make sure we get the other stuff up first, though.
Okay. Yeah. Can you make sure that there's an action for?
Yeah, I guess we should just list the Apamo work items there.
Yeah.
So I think.
Okay. I think Stefan's in it, so it's okay.
Well, yes. So first one is getting.
Getting the policy namespaces.
Right. It's going to be much more accurate if John just types himself.
I think based on what he said, you want to drop cap mac admin and cap mac override. You want to drop that from your patch because we containers can have that.
Right. Yes.
So.
So just drop sys module for now.
What's that?
Just drop cap sys module for now.
Right.
Yeah.
And then consider doing the per-FS mount rules for proc, cgroup, and sys.
Yes. Yeah. And as soon as we have that in the kernel and Apamo, I'm just going to try and update the profile so that it's as secure as well.
Because to be honest,
we can. And then we probably need to offer a flag somewhere in the table and say, hey, either you have Apamo in the container or you've got host protection.
I mean, if we can get to where the container can't mount cgroup somewhere else, so they can't bypass the device's cgroup, suddenly we close a huge hole that right now is.
Yes.
So okay.
And if we can also filter proc sys devices and proc sysrec and possibly some others that. I mean, I'm probably just going to send an email to Filming and say, hey, what are the other dangerous stuff that you can think of that we should just block to avoid?
I'm kind of hoping that proc sysrec will get handled by the user namespaces by 1204, but we'll see.
Okay. Yeah. That's yeah. If we can get user namespaces working for proc, that would be a huge step in the right direction.
Is there anything anybody else wanted to that they're not seeing addressed that they figure need to be addressed for 1204?
I'm going to assign you the three first work items. Is that fine?
Sure. We can always change that later anyway. Yeah, sure. Can you make it Surge-Allen just so that Surge-Allen is my launchpad ID,
Oh, yeah, right.
so I get called out. Thanks. I rely on the tools.
We rely on you. This is the circle black.
Only if the tools depend on you, then. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks.